Next, we're going to work with JavaScript. Something like that. Are we good? Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, so this will actually just go ahead and give us that sans serif font here, which looks pretty nice. The font size is just a little bit smaller, which we can deal with later. But the fonts, or I'm sorry, the coloring for a link is blue, and we want to stick with the black, and we want to take out the underline until it's hovered. So for that, we can just start with the anchor. We want to go the text decoration, which we kind of covered on Monday, is none. And this will take out the underline, just like that. And for the links, we can actually just say the color. And there are several ways of doing this. One way of doing it is just simply to say black. CSS has like a kind of library of colors that you can choose from. Black, gray, light gray, dark gray, blue, light blue, dark blue. Dark gray. And so colors that you're going to get like that are going to be noted in red. And it's kind of going to be really unfamiliar for some. If you're familiar with hex, dark gray we can do is 333. We can also add 3 more 3s to that. And the last one is the RGB, which I guess we could use, but
4040 is Google.
I guess we could then.
So when he's doing these RGB values, it's
red, green, then blue, yeah.
Hey.
Huh? What was that? Oh, yeah. It's the same exact thing. I don't know what 40 is for the hex.
So hex, I was giving the hex. 40,
Oh, what? Oh, okay, never mind then.
Todd, in light of what you mentioned earlier regarding standards of presenting code, which one of these options is usually the acceptable standard?
Both are fine, but hexadecimal is standard for web programming for that. And RGBA is when you want to do a little transparency, you can use RGBA. And hexadecimal has a millisecond performance benefit over using the words like red, blue, green. So hexadecimal is pretty much what you want to stick with. Unless you need transparency, then use RGBA. Good question, Paul. Yeah, I'll show you some examples of where RGBA comes in a nice. It's good to use some use cases for RGBA.
So coming back to this, I made this ID circle for the number 5, and I'd like to just throw that in there right now.
Before you jump in on that,
sure.
Do you have any thought, or what kind of logic do you use in code organization? Because that's one of the areas that, for me, it took a little bit of time to sort of get my head around, just to keep my style sheet well organized. Like, are you thinking about anything when, like, let me put the anchor tag here, the li there, in my style sheet? Is code organization?
Yeah. So CSS files parse line after line. Parse means it gets read and evaluated. So what's going to happen here is, because I have body for the font family first here and then the margin second, I could have had this, it doesn't matter the order, but I like to have the fonts usually generally at the top. That way you know exactly kind of the above the fold is what it's called. This is what shows first on the screen when you go to it. Fonts are what you're going to see first. Colors are what you're going to see first. Things like that. Margins you're not really so much going to care about, but the margin of the body, the main, and the figure, because that's also going to be found in a CSS reset, figures have a margin, bodies have the margin, and main also has the margin. I guess in this case we're not really using main just yet, but in the future it's good to just take out margins and leave those closer to the top, so that if you have something that when it reevaluates body and you actually wanted that margin in there, you could actually do that. So when we do our CSS resets, when you have this margin 0, the CSS reset is actually put in before our style sheet. It's so that we can overwrite the original CSS reset, not have the reset overwrite what we did. Another thing is I like to have the DOM elements, particularly at the top. and then have the classes and IDs in order of which they appear in the DOM. So if we're having header right here and then we have circle, chances are right under header right, I'll probably do the UL and the LI. But since we have this nav here with the class of header right, and because it's pertaining to something relatively close to the top of the page, I'm fine with having header right here, because that's going to impact the entire page. The unordered list and the list are what's going to follow, because all of our list elements here, none of them have the bullets in front of them, then we can simply say that we're free to use these at kind of like a global scale. The list style is going to be none, the padding is going to be none, and each link is going to be displayed inline block. So now anything throughout here, if we wanted to style them further, we would do them under. That way it can catch that we want no list style, we want no padding, and for the list elements, we want them to be inline block. If we wanted them to be row, or I'm sorry, for a column somewhere later on in the page, we can have something like another class or an ID, and we can simply state that the list element for that will be displayed block, and that will actually make them all go back into a column. So it's easier to display kind of like, or have the standards of what you want your site to look like, and then modify the existing rather than writing an existing and then accidentally having something modify it later on. Like I said, it all goes line by line. So typically you're going to want to have your DOM elements at the top, and your kind of personalized classes and IDs will be closer to the bottom.
Yeah. So the main thing you're thinking about is how the styles can overwrite each other.
Right. Yeah.
The computer reads your style sheet from top to bottom, and so you're putting the more general styles
At the top.
The whole page or site-wide settings, more general styles at the top, and then the more specific, I'm going to overwrite the more general down at the bottom. The more specific is down at the bottom to overwrite the more general, which is at the top.
Exactly.
Now, I don't know if you noticed, but in Shay Howe's book, he had so much styling that he did a lot of alphabetizing. So
That's a good way of doing it too.
he had everything into sections. So each page, for instance, had its own section with a comment at the top to title it, and then each section was alphabetized with each other. And then within that, he even alphabetized each one of these attributes. He had those all alphabetized.
So,
Oh, right, yeah.
I mean, he was like really picky about all.
so if anybody's having a little trouble following along with what they're talking about, basically Todd's asking Julian like what he thinks about how he basically organizes his style list, his style sheet here. And so Julian was saying that he does the most generic, like what would be like the DOM elements, the stuff that's going to have a global effect on the document, and then he puts that at the top, and then he becomes more specific as he goes down. And I think also, and then he pointed out another situation in Shay Howe's book. So I think it's kind of like a situational thing. One thing, whatever your preference is as as the developer, but also he likes to do the alphabetical. Shay Howe does, because obviously as the program gets more complex, you're going to have a lot more rules. So it's I think the most common things you see is people doing the DOM elements at the top, and then getting more specific, and whether you want to alphabetize your classes, your IDs, or if you want to do it section by section, it's all like personal preference at that point.
I don't do the alphabetizing, but I can see the advantage if there's.
I wouldn't have the patience. Yeah.
OCD.
Talking semantics here, but my concern, and I think what Julian brought up in bringing this up, was how quickly the website appears. Correct, Julian? If Shay Howe's system slows down the website, I'm not going to use his system. I'm sorry. It's about speed. Is it negligible in the end, I guess?
So, well, one with CSS, the main thing, other than like getting into the specifics of what Todd was saying, like hexadecimal has like a split second advantage, is that like if you can the main thing to focus on in terms of speed is to minimize lines. Like, don't repeat yourself. So anytime you have like multiple elements sharing the same style, then put them within one rule. Because basically, and speed's not really going to come into play that much until you have a six-figure-a-day site or whatever. Like once your site gets popular. So the main thing is to try to not, exactly. So try not to repeat yourself, because basically the computer has to go through and interpret every line. So it has to read every line. So as much as you can minimize lines, that's the real key. Because if you can minimize the lines, then if it's 100 lines versus 120, not that big of a deal. But then as you start getting more and more people on the site, those 20 lines add up. Does that make sense?
Oh, no, perfect answer. That explained it perfectly.
And your verbiage is absolutely correct with English. However, in web programming, semantics refers to giving meaning to our code. So instead of using a div, we'll use a tag called header. We're going to learn about that. We haven't taught it yet. So that's just that word there. And then when we talk about speed, the word that's used in web programming is performance. Sometimes you'll even hear people abbreviate it and call it perf. People don't do that. You'll talking about perf, like perf, and there's even a hashtag.
How long do you really want each segment to be? Does it matter?
Is that how humans are minimizing their communication?
Okay.
Less lines to say?